Hello everyone and welcome to It Goes Off wrap of the week, and we're looking at round 15 and full of controversy and some exciting basketball, and it all tipped off with the Perth Wildcats taking on the Gold Coast Blaze, and the Perth Wildcats coming away with an impressive 92-80 win. Jesse Wagstaff sensational with 25 points on 8 of 13 shooting, and Idris Deleon led the way for the Blaze with 18 points and 7 rebounds. In New Zealand, the Breakers took on the Adelaide 36ers, and in front of a sold-out crowd, they got the win, 80-63. Thomas Abercrombie led the way for the New Zealand Breakers, and Chris Warren, he was the leading scorer for the Sixers with 14 points. Of note, it was the rebounding edge to the Breakers. They smashed the Sixers on the boards, 50-24. In Wollongong, the Wollongong Hawks' season of woes continued, and they were only good enough to put on 59 points. The Cairns Taipans, they didn't set the game on fire either with only 61, but they came away with a very important road win. The Hawks, Oscar Foreman was impressive with 19 points and 7 rebounds, and for the Taipans, Andrew Warren led the way with 17, and Brad Hill had 12 points. The Hawks, they have had enormous problems on the offensive end. They only shot it at 39%, and the Cairns Taipans weren't much better. In fact, they were worse. They shot it at 38%, was still good enough to get the win, and Andrew Warren hit some big baskets down the stretch, none bigger than his three-pointer with 1 minute and 24 seconds remaining to give them the win. In Townsville, we saw one of the best games we've seen in the last few years, with the Townsville Crocodiles beating the Sydney Kings to celebrate their 600th NBL game. 20 years of being involved in the competition, and they won it 118-114 in double overtime, as I mentioned. Michael Cedar with 22 points. He hit some big baskets, as did Jacob Holmes, who had 20 points and 10 rebounds. None bigger than the Jacob Holmes basket at the end of regulation when they were 3 points down to tie the game to send it into that first overtime. And for the Sydney Kings, Anatoly Bose with 25 points and 7 rebounds was spectacular, and Ben Madsen with 24 points. The game was, again, heavily influenced by the rebounding count, and the Kings did a great job on the glass. They led that category 56-35, but the Crocs, they took care of the basketball. In 50 minutes of basketball action, they only had 8 turnovers, and Jacob Holmes, as we mentioned, that go-ahead, he had the three, but he also hit some big free throws down the stretch to give them the win. Julian Kazoo had 17 points and 13 rebounds, but he fouled out of the contest and wasn't his usual efficient self on the offensive end. And in the last game of the round on Sunday, the Melbourne Tigers took on the Gold Coast Blaze. The Tigers coming off a 2-game losing streak at home against the undermanned Gold Coast Blaze, who were without James Harvey and also without Chris Goulding, who is going to have some x-rays on a knee issue that he sustained in the game against Perth. But it was the 73-60 win that the Gold Coast Blaze had that got the Blazers season back on track. It wasn't a pretty game. The Tigers were led by the league's leading scorer with 14 points. That's Cameron Tregar, and Ron Dorsey had 13 points in only 60 points. The Tigers, they shot it poorly at 38% from the field and 21% from the three-point line. For the Gold Coast Blaze, Idris Deleon with 21 points and 8 rebounds. Adam Gibson was the second leading scorer for the Blaze with 16 points. It was a smashing on the glass by the Gold Coast Blaze. They had 51 rebounds compared to the Melbourne Tigers, who only had 26. Neither team shot the ball well, but it was the Gold Coast Blaze with their backs to the wall that had a huge character-building win, and they're hoping that that gets their season back on track. These two teams will meet again in the next round in a mini-series that they have. This series is tied at 1 game all, both teams getting a road win. Let's take a look at the NBL standings, and at the top of the table, it's the Perth Wildcats and the New Zealand Breakers. We all expect that they're going to occupy those 2 spots at the end of the season. Still a long way to go, but their form has been pretty good, and they're going to take some beating not to figure in playoff action. And then it's a logjam for who is going to fill the final 2 spots in the playoffs. The Crocs are playing well at 8 and 6. The Taipans, many people write them off and don't think they have the tools, but they're at 9 and 7, showing some good form. The Melbourne Tigers, they are 9 and 9, and controversially, after their game against the Gold Coast Blaze, it has been reported that Ayinde Ubaka has been released from his contract. We're unsure whether he's been fired or he's left the club, but the bottom line is it looks like he won't be in a Tigers uniform for the remainder of the season. They're still hanging around with a big week coming up, but the Gold Coast Blaze at 7 and 8 on winning form. The Kings, although they lost to the Crocs, they showed that they are capable of competing with some of the better teams. They're 8 and 10. The Sixers and the Hawks, you'd expect that they need a mighty miracle if they're going to figure in any sort of playoff action. That's all we have time for, but if you want to check out all the goings on, and in particular get involved with the discussion with the Melbourne Tigers releasing Ayinde Ubaka, check out the full version of It Goes Off.